it's Karen Fricky from Capital Quilts. I wanted to try to give you the last 3 stitches that we're doing for the beaded embellishment sampler on video rather than in person, since who knows when we're going to be back in class together. Anyway, I thought maybe this would be able to give you something to do during our extended quarantine and give you an opportunity to finish sewing. I'm going to show you today the last 3 stitches, which are the stacking beads, the attaching a cabochon, and the fringe. I've also made a little quilt square binding on the edge so that I can show you some of those stitches. The first one we're going to do is the stack stitch, but I wanted to remind you how to tie that knot in case you have forgotten. Okay, here's that knot. I have my double strand of thread through my needle, and I'm holding both ends in my left hand. In my right hand, I have the needle pushed against my pointer finger. And then what I'm going to do is make an X. So I've got the needle on my pointer finger, the 2 ends across that, and then I'm gonna wrap 1, 2, 3 around the point of the needle, slide those 3 wraps, grab the end of the needle, and slide those wraps all the way down to the end of the thread. And when I'm done, pull it tight, and then I've got my needle knotted. So the first stitch is number 8, the stacking beads, and we can do this a number of ways. We can start with a flat, larger one at the bottom and work our way up, or we can do all the beads the same, or we can mix them up. It really depends. So I'm going to show you the first one. We're going to start with a donut shape, kind of a flat round one, and work our way up. So you go in through the back, pick up that donut shape, thread the next one, and then the next smallest one. So I've got 3 there. And now I'm going to take that tiny one, my seed bead, which is going to be the cap at the top. So I've got the 3 larger ones on the bottom and the seed bead on top. I'm going to take that needle, keep that seed bead separate, take that needle and go back down through those bottom 3, pull it taut. Oh, and I've got an extra little thread. I'm just going to tug that so that all the threads are tight, and that top seed bead you can see is turned on its side. So then I've got a nice little stack. So this next stack stitch is going to use seed bead, bugle, seed bead, bugle, seed bead, and then this little stone and a seed bead as the cap. And remember, always when you're using bugle beads, you have to put seed beads on either end so it doesn't slice the thread here. So I'm going to load seed bead, bugle, seed bead, bugle. Now this kind of stitch is when you might decide you want to use the longer needle. It'll hold more beads without you having to slide them off onto the thread. And then the cap. So I've got those loaded onto the thread. I'm going to slide that cap, the seed bead, further away and go back down all of these holes, all of the beads that are in the body. And I want to go right back. You can see I want to go right back next to the thread where it came out. And you've got a little tentacle. I'm not sure. It looks kind of cool. and then again knot that off. So this stack stitch that we just learned is going to be the basis for the next 2 stitches we learn. The 9th stitch, attaching a cabochon, or the 9th technique. So I have this cabochon here. Remember, a cabochon is flat on one side and rounded on the other. And I am going to just trace around it so I know that this is where my cabochon is going to be. What I want to do then is make stacks of beads all the way around. So here, here. I'm going to go all the way around and make stacks of beads that are as high up as I want them to go on this. So this will probably be just a few, maybe 3 seed, 1 larger and then 2 seed beads to get up to the top of the cabochon. Once we have finished our little Stonehenge grouping of beads all around where the cabochon is supposed to go, and knot off that last one of the stacked beads, we cross our fingers and hope it works. If you used one of the Frixion pens to mark that circle, now is a good time to steam press it from behind to get rid of that mark. You can see how the cabochon fits right in place. We can take a glue stick, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, and add a little glue to the back of the cabochon just to hold it in place for us while we're working on caging in this cabochon beast. Now what we're gonna do is find one of those stacks. See my needle coming up there? I wanna go through the beads and come out the top one, and then what I'm going to do is, if all of those little seed beads, those cap beads, are on their sides, I'm going to take that thread, the needle, they're not on their sides, they're lying flat, and I'm going to go through them. One by one. So that I am making a little cage. And when I pull that tight, otherwise it's gonna have a gap. When I pull that tight, it should all lay flat. Now, it doesn't quite lay flat. You can see that in between some of these beads, you can see the thread. Now you have to do it like this the first time around to know if you're gonna have to add beads to the top. So it's kind of like you gotta do it. And then what we're gonna do is unthread that top row. So that we can go through and add beads in between those top beads so that we don't see any thread. It's almost impossible to know whether you're going to need to add beads or not until you try it once. So I'm going to unthread all of that top row that I just completed, and I'm going to add one tiny seed bead between each of the seed beads on top. So now that I've established that we're going to have to add seed beads, I'm going to go through one seed bead at the top, the cat bead, and then I'm going to add another one onto the needle before I go through the second one. And I'm just guessing, but I don't think we're going to need to add one between every single. So I'm going to thread 2 of those caps together and then add another seed bead. And then thread 2 caps and add another seed bead. Two caps. When I pull it tight, that looks like it's coming out pretty evenly. So I'm going to keep going around and we'll see what happens at the end. So I have added 1 seed bead between every 2 stacked beads, and when I pull it taut, it is really pretty good. Now there's a little give up there. I could maybe have done a little bit more, but overall I pretty much am happy with it. Now what I'm going to do is go all the way around one more time through all those beads that create that crown. All the way around. Pull it nice and taut. Having gone all the way through around the top row one more time makes it smooths out those beads so they lay closer together. And then I'm going to go back down through one of the stacks. Tie it off in the back with a double knot. And the cabochon is done. So we are to the last stitch, the fringe stitch. Now, if you are thinking carefully ahead, you can use a binding with a stripe in it, and that tells you where you're going to put the fringe because you've got it already marked out. Now, if you don't use striped binding, there's a product I like a lot, which is called zebra tape. It's great. It's made specifically for hand quilters to help them mark their stitches, how far apart their stitches are. So you can always use this, just line it up with the binding and use that. So you might do every second, every third along that zebra tape. Use that as your marking tool. I'm just going to use the binding. So let's say we come up on, let's start on this side. We come out on the very point, the very edge of the binding, the folded edge, and I'm going to come out in between, right in the middle of that white stripe. And then perhaps, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to do 5 seed beads. Well, I dropped 1, so I'm going to do 4 seed beads. 4 seed beads, 1 larger bead, And then I will add a seed bead again as the cap. Now this is the same stitch we did as the stack stitch. The only difference is the binding. And you want to be sure that you don't miss any of those seed beads when you're going back down. And then I bring it to the back side. And get those threads pulled through evenly, and you've got a little fringe right there coming off the end. Now I always like to knot up on the back here in case one of these gets cut or breaks or torn. You're not going to lose the whole fringe if you knot between each. So then you knot on that one and then slide the needle under and go down to your second little fringe. So I would again do 4 seed beads, 1 large one, 1 cap, go back through all of them and knot it off, and keep going as many of those as I wanted. Well, here are a couple of variations. We can use those seed beads, and I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've loaded 8 onto my needle. And then I'm gonna take, rather than having 1 cap bead, I'm gonna take 3 cap beads and go back through those 2, 3, 5. And when you pull those tight and smooth them out a little bit, you have like a little 3-prong end cap. Okay, here's another variation. Let's do, how about a seed, a bugle, a seed, and then a larger bead. But we always want to take an end cap, a seed bead as an end cap to finish that off. Take that cap and go back through. Now when you get into very lengthy fringe, that's when you really want to use that long needle that's in your needle book. And you want to pull it taut, but not so taut that it distorts the fabric. And knot. Go to your next one. There are also beads that, rather than the hole being drilled lengthwise, the holes are drilled through the top, so they're meant to dangle. And these you can use too. That dangly one will act as the end cap. Go back through all of the seed beads. And knot it off. Now this one you have to be a little bit careful about, because if you pull it too tightly, you can see it gets distorted. So when you're knotting it, just be sure that you have enough slack in there so that it hangs nicely from that last seed bead and it's not distorted too much. So there are some different fringes. Have fun with it, play with it. Well, that was fun. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer any of your questions, and I hope that we see each other very soon in classes at Capital Quilts. In the meantime, stay safe, wash your hands, take care of each other. Bye.